I was living as a prisoner inside of my own body. And it wasn't until I went to prison and I didn't have to pay any bills, wasn't worried about if my girlfriend was going to cheat on me. And all I had was myself and my mind and meditation and actual proper sleep and learning how to adapt to the prison environment. But all I had was me.
You are here. Welcome to the Purpose Finder podcast. This is the show where we uncover why you are truly here and, more importantly, how to make it your reality. My father, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, said the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life without purpose. And research further shows that people with a strong sense of purpose are 2.4 times more likely to feel fulfilled. Each week, I sit down with extraordinary guests, entrepreneurs, artists, thought leaders who are boldly living their why. We dive deep into their journeys, the struggles they've overcome, their breakthroughs, and the lessons that can help you do the same. I am your beautiful host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn, and we're about to explore the mindsets, tools, and strategies to help you live a life with purpose, passion, and legacy. Are you ready? Let's go and dive into the episode. And we are back for another great episode of the Purpose Finder podcast, where our mission is simple: to inspire you to uncover and find your life's purpose and to live a life overflowing with three things: meaning, fulfillment, and significance. Yes, very important. So many of us deep down, we all crave belonging. Nobody wants to be unfulfilled. And we are all searching, asking the big question: why in the world am I here? Well, I hope you allow your search to end right here. I am your host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn, and today I have the great, incredible honor of sitting with someone who isn't just talking about purpose. He doesn't even just think and dream it, but he is actually living it out. We're going to hear his stories, his journey, some lessons he's learned along the way, and we get to celebrate all of what he is doing with him. I hope you enjoy our great guest today, Garrain Jones. Hi, it is so good to have you here. Thank you so much for saying yes, because you didn't have to, but it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. I came across your work a couple of years ago and started following you on Instagram, and a lot of what you were saying was resonating with me, especially as I watch your story and I watch your journey. And I said, I have to give him the opportunity to share his space with my people. So welcome.
Hi, friend. That was a beautiful introduction, and I just want to say thank you for seeing me. Thank you for having me on, and just want to acknowledge you for being brave enough to have a space like this, so stories like mine and the listeners could have wings. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. I don't want to read a bio. The people don't want to hear me talk, believe it or not. But they do want to hear your heart. They do want to hear from your heart. Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing in the world? And kind of everything in between. So give us all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I came from a very difficult background. My father was murdered when I was 12 years old. My mom was left having to raise two badass kids, and tried to play the role of the man and the woman in the house. And though she did the best that she could with what she knew, I wasn't old enough to process that. So it felt like my mom didn't love me, and I didn't know that she was trying her best to prepare me for the real world, which is pretty harsh. And so I went through my life feeling like my mom didn't love me. I got bullied in school because maybe I wasn't this thing or that thing, or I was light skinned, but I had coarse hair and it didn't make sense because the other light skinned guys had wavy hair. And these little kids just say things that stick with you. And then so I didn't even know where I fit in. And typically when that happens, you become a loner or you start hanging out with other people who don't fit in. And naturally, I started hanging out with other people who didn't fit in, and those were other troublemakers. people who got in trouble all the time, kicked out of school. You are the five closest people you surround yourself around. So I was naturally around a bunch of people who got in trouble all the time. That was their form of expression. Um, and so I was breaking in the cars, breaking in the houses, going in and out of juvenile. And that was pretty much the the crux of my life. And I just felt like I was alone for a very long time. And anytime I would try to express what was authentically inside. Maybe I wanted to sing, maybe I wanted to dance, maybe I wanted to wear fashion a certain way. There was always someone in my life to say, you can't do this, you can't do this, you should do like this because you're black and only black people do things like this, but you can't do that. And if you do that, yeah, that's like acting like a white person. And I was just like, I didn't know who to be because everything was coming from everywhere and it didn't have proper guidance growing up. And, you, when, if you understand how ABCs works, it's the introduction of language. ABCs turns into words, then sentences, then paragraphs, then essays, then books, then libraries. The ABCs of feeling alone, of feeling unworthy, of not feeling loved, of feeling like you're so different that you you wanted it to escape your own self because being yourself wasn't good enough in other people's eyes, and not having those kind of tools. This is what I used to think that somebody, I had abandonment issues in my childhood, whether it was like my brother um, didn't want to hang out with me or things, but ultimately I abandoned myself because I was then starting to do what everybody else wanted me to do. And this is most children, by the way. It's like the ages 0 to 7 is where every decision that most decisions that you make as an adult was installed from 0 to 7. Well, from 0 to 4, you're not conscious of it. So most people are walking around unconscious because the unconscious part of them is where a lot of it was installed. And so if you take that as the ABC version, and then my life turns into words, sentences, paragraphs, essays, books, now you can see how I got kicked out of school, how I went in and out of jail, how I went to prison for 2.5 years. But then, and I'm just giving you a brief summary as I come to a close of my life, it was the prison for me to understand that in losing my freedom, I discovered my freedom and I started studying what does it really mean to be free? Because even though
Wait a
you're in
minute.
this,
Hold on. Let's
yeah,
stop there. You said in losing your freedom, you discovered your freedom.
yeah.
Ah, you got to give us more on that, Garrain. You got to give us more, more on that.
Well, we live in the land of the free. This is, in America, and they say, oh, we're free, we're free, we're free, but we're actually not free.
Absolutely.
Outside freedom does not represent freedom. It's the power to possess your own mind. That is freedom. But most people don't possess their own minds. They're hooked by scrolling. They're hooked by food, sex, porn, drug, alcohol, seeking other people's approval. All of that are forms of prison. So they don't even have to throw you in prison no more. So they just get smart and pay money for you know changing all the branding and alcohol to look like candy wrappers so it can tap into the first colors that you saw when you were a little kid. It's all psychology. And so I was living as a prisoner inside of my own body. And it wasn't until I went to prison and I didn't have to pay any bills. Wasn't worried about if my girlfriend was going to cheat on me. And all I had was myself and my mind and meditation and actual proper sleep and learning how to adapt to the prison environment. But all I had was me. And so when I was about almost 2.5 years in the prison sentence, we were watching um, movies once a month, and Shawshank Redemption, which is a movie that's based out of prison was on, and Tim Robbins, which is the lead actor, he said, um, they can take anything they want away from me, but they can't take away my mind. When I heard
Mm.
that, something about that created a conscious interrupt. And that's when I said, oh my goodness, I know why I'm in prison. Because when I was free, every day I used to say, I feel like I'm so far away from where I'm supposed to be, like I'm in prison inside of my own body. And next thing you know, I'm in Europe, so far away from where I'm supposed to be, in prison. So in that moment, I said, well, then I know why I'm here. Okay, so if I can think myself in prison,
I
in
can
that
think my
case,
way out.
in that case, I'm a free man. What would a free man do? What would a free person do? And a little voice inside said, everything you used to love to do as a child. So I used to love to run, used to love to motivate people, used to love to draw, used to love to sing, and I stopped doing all those things. I started doing all those things while in prison. I never felt more joy, more free, more aliveness in my life than when I was in prison, giving myself to my cup's overflow. Now, to close this story, when I felt free, I got busted for smuggling drugs. Never did drugs, but I wanted money. It was greed. They tested those drugs 3 times, 6.2 kilos of heroin. That's why I was in there serving a 12-year sentence. When I felt free, magically, they retested the drugs. They had no reason to retest those drugs 2.5 years. But when I felt free, they called me into the office and they said, Jones, the drugs were fake. I mean, 90% were fake. And for the amount of time that you've done, 90% were fake. And for the amount that was real, you've already done the time. You're free to go home.
Mm. And this was how much time now
Two
had
and a
passed?
half years.
2.5 years. Wow.
So I learned that there is a force more powerful than people.
Mm.
So I spent all these years studying what is that powerful that it could override what any human says, that an
Mm-hmm.
outcome. And I kept coming back to what Nikola Tesla said: if you want to know the secrets of the universe, you think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So I've been studying energy, frequency, and vibration ever since then. And what is God made of? Energy, frequency, and vibration. And so I found a unique way to be able to facilitate an elevation of energy, frequency, and vibration in my body. And that will always have me transcend any construct that's trying to hold me down. And this is one of the biggest lessons that I got in my school that I called prison, because wherever you're stuck at is your school.
And not only is it's interesting to hear you say, you had found God and what is God. Not only is He made up of that, but He creates that. Like He creates energy, He creates vibration, He creates uh, uh, just everything that we see that we are. And you and I were talking about, how we connected and why you said yes. And one of the things that we said was, we don't just of our own fruition make a decision. Like God said, you put it out there, and God said, this is it for you. And so you find this thing outside of you. And it's amazing that you could have very well been in there 12 years, even though you were in prison, you were free. Like you made a decision to free yourself. And there's so many times that we sit in our house, in our homes, in relationships, at work, at school, in our offices, and we want to be free, but our mind won't allow us to, because we're just stuck in our own prison. Like your prison doesn't have to be an actual prison like where you went to, but prison can be wherever you are that you don't necessarily have full control of your mind. And I love how you said that.
Yeah,
I love how you say that.
thank you so much. I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh no, I feel really bad for you, but I've never been to prison before. I can't relate." I was like, "But you've been in a relationship for 15 years. You know you don't want to be in, and you stay in it. That's
Exactly.
prison. You've been at that job
Prison.
for 20 years, and you're like, well, I can't leave, but it's not what I really want to do. That's
Prison.
prison." And so the point of relatability is, if you're not doing what you actually want to do, or living the life that you actually want to live, I can guarantee you that there's something in your life, whether it's attachment issues or you're afraid of your own bigness or whatever, that's a form of prison, and you not realizing you got the key to unlock that prison. And a lot of people will go to their grave with that. So that's why my work in the world is teaching people how to find that key to unlock the jail cell they didn't even know that they were in, but you can feel the energy so that they can be as a full expression of themselves.
And I love that. So you got out of prison 2.5 years later, and then what did you immediately do?
Well, I had written songs while I was in prison, and I said, I'm
Mhm.
going to go get a record deal. So what I immediately did was got on MySpace and I posted my songs on like Twitter and and like MySpace and um, whichever one was back then. It was one of those. I think it was MySpace first and then Twitter. Yeah, no, I got on MySpace and I started posting. I'm a singer and I didn't have any music, but then this one guy named John Henry took a chance on me and I made one song in the studio with him. And then I went on MySpace again and posted that one song. All of a sudden, people starts like, "Oh, I like this song. This is really nice," and everything. And so, I had the opportunity to, like, really to write the song. I mean, record the songs that I had written while I was in prison, and in 30 days, I had 28 songs. Right after that, I was at a comedy store where there was comedians and everything, and the actor D. Ray Davis, instead of putting up a comedian, he put me up and said, "My little brother just got out of prison, and he's gonna sing you a song." And I had a song called "Mr. Ordinary." I sang it. I didn't know who was in the audience. Ludacris and Jermaine Dupri just happened to be in the audience, and Luda is like, "I really like your music. Do you have any more songs?" I was like, "Yeah, I have 28 songs that I recorded in the last 38 days." 2.5 months later, I had a $500,000 record deal with DTP Def Jam, and so like
Wow.
that's what happened. I just at the time did not understand how to move in life with ultimate humility and like being in integrity. So I had this thing where I was chasing women. I would make music for women. I just wasn't true and pure to the craft. Like God gave me something really special, and I didn't treat it like it was special. I didn't treat it like it
Mm.
was sacred. I treated it like it came from a garage sale or a second, like I was deserving of this life. And I was like, but I didn't have anybody in my life to point me in the right direction like I do now. So I didn't know that there was a way of books and seminars that you could take so that you could develop your thinking and your mind and elevate your soul and your spirit, and communities that are empowered communities. I had no idea that those even existed. But that is the very nature of the thing that supported me in elevating into who I am now.
It makes me want to go back, Aaron, to the very first thing you told us about losing your father at the age of 12.
Yeah,
And because you said you didn't have anyone in your life to steer you,
right.
to not necessarily show you right from wrong, but just to steer you that if this is what you want, then this is what you need to do. This is what the mindset of this person that has this looks like. And so I can only imagine that not having your father there from the age of 12, how that affected your life up to now.
Well, I'll tell you, contrary to what other people say, there's some people be like, I've heard a woman say, my kids don't need a father. Everybody needs a father if you want to have a balanced out kid. Because my mother is a great, great mom, but there's nothing that a woman can do that will take the role of a father. She can try her best, and there's nothing that a father can do that can take the role of a mother. So they actually need each other because there's different energies. You know what I'm saying? You can't have the night without the day, but they go together. And so My mom did her absolute best to discipline us and to be the nurturer and to work and to put food on the table and to do and it was just too hard and we didn't make it easy. So there was no like I didn't and even if my dad was around, my dad was an alcoholic and a drug dealer. He wouldn't have been the person to he was in and out of jail. He went to prison. So he wouldn't have been the person that was going to give me that game anyways. He's like, put some hair on your chest, boy, and that was his language. So it wasn't until actually I moved here to Austin 4 years ago that I encountered healthy masculine men for the first time in my life. In my life. And I started to learn, I'm like, oh, that's what devotion looks like. That's what a devoted husband looks like. That's what a, and so a lot of times a lot of people blame each other. Men blame women, women blame men. And honestly, most don't even know what they're talking about because what they're blaming is someone who's never had an actual example. So that's like me I have a daughter who's 23, I have a daughter who's 3, and a son who's 6 months old tomorrow. That's like my daughter who's learning how to use her words and all this other stuff. And I'm just going to blame her for not being like how I want her to be. And I'm like, well, she's 3 and she's learning expression. She's learning about life. She can't process emotionally the way that you do because that part of her brain hasn't developed. Most kids are in that bucket.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a deep sense of compassion when it comes to men and women. Like I really do. They're like, oh man, he cheated on his wife. I don't condone it, but I can understand if he came from a family of cheaters, he's never been around to see what devotion looks like. It wasn't until I saw what devotion, I'm like, oh, that's how you move. That's how you honor your wife. That's what it looks like. You're not going to lose anything if you get into marriage because nature never takes away anything without replacing with something of equal or greater benefit. And so when I started seeing models, you become the 5 closest people that you surround yourself around. That's when I started to change and grow and change about myself. My thoughts start changing. My money started changing. My integrity started changing. Now I'm that for a lot of men. They've never seen a the man that makes money, that knows about business, that is healthy, that's a good looking man, great body, great sense of humor, devoted husband, devoted father. Like it's such a rare breed. And so I take pride in knowing that the example I never had, I developed the skills over years
Mm-hmm.
to be able to honor women in their rightful light. And most women don't even know what their rightful light is because their rightful light is actually 1,000, 100 million times stronger than any man, but there's nothing that you need to do. It's in your being and your power of suggestion. So that's why the woman's intuition turns on when she's pregnant because it's telling you more of who you really are the more you tap into who you really are. And so for me, my role is to honor women in their rightful light and remind them of what their soul already knows and watch them rise while being an example of how men can show up in the presence of another woman without having ulterior motives. So I have a very clear mission besides creating a space for the little kid to be happy inside of the adult. And that is also to be a representation of how to honor our women and how women can be around a man and feel safe because the man feels safe inside of his own body.
So when you say your life's mission, when do you know a season? Do you know a moment? It could be a time when you recognize that this is my purpose. And This is what I'm going to run after. And you completely started to live it out without apology, without limitations. Hey, purpose seekers. If this conversation has you thinking about your purpose, what it is, how to find it, and how to truly live it, then I have something just for you. Introducing the Purpose Finder Formula. You have the free access to my 20-minute training designed to help you uncover your purpose and to start living it with confidence. No fluff, no guesswork. It's clear, practical, step-by-step guide to finding meaning and gaining clarity and direction. Your purpose is calling. Are you ready to answer? Head over to www.charissamonroe.com/purpose finder formula. Enter your info and I'll send it straight to your inbox. Imagine waking up every day knowing your life has meaning, impact, and joy. That's what awaits you. So don't wait. Grab your free training today. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, so this whole thing started because I couldn't get a relationship with my daughter. My 23-year-old, she was 15 at the time. No matter what I did, she wouldn't get. No matter how much money I made, what I looked like on social media, she didn't care about none of that. She wouldn't give me the time of day. I was like, well, maybe it's not about anything I can do. Maybe it's something up with me. But I didn't know that because I didn't have an example in the house. Like, so I didn't, I'm just like throwing darts at no targets. And so I started taking emotional intelligence courses, relationships courses, communications courses, spiritual psychology, insight, landmark, mastery and transformation training, 10 days in the dark, 5 days in silence. And every single modality that I took was to learn what was it about me that my daughter doesn't trust. Every single, but I didn't know that it was also preparing me to be one of the most powerful like speakers and facilitators in the country. I didn't know I was being prepared for that, but that'll tell you what being in devotion to the woman. My daughter, she was 15, but she's still a woman. And so not taking, hey, don't ever call me again. These are things that I heard before. I'd be like, okay, well, she said don't call. I didn't know that meant show up even more and still show up and still show up and still show up. So when I became, and it's all about how I saw myself. I was just this weak person. I was strong for y'all, but I was weak in the presence of my daughter because I had shame and guilt for how I didn't show up before when I didn't love myself. And you can't give what you don't have. And when I became, and I was no longer this weak person, and I claimed a new identity. I am the most powerful representation of who my daughter will marry one day. Just in that affirmation. Sometimes people say affirmations don't work. Affirmations that you don't believe don't work. And I started saying, I am the most powerful representation. And that was almost like this puppeteer, kind of like holding me accountable to the highest representation. So, what I was doing with women, how I was thinking, what I was eating, everything is this the highest representation of who my daughter will marry one day. And I started shifting in that way. And I started pursuing her. And I started saying, hey, I want to take you out on a date. So, where it all changed is I didn't know that when a woman sees and is influenced by something, like there were women around me that saw me pursuing my relationship with my daughter and still going and still going and still going. They never had a man to pursue them like that. So they started picturing, I want my dad. I wish my dad would have pursued me like that. And just by suggestive thought, their relationships with their dads started changing because they changed the identity of their dad based off of what they saw inside of me being a representation of who their dad could be. So when that happens to 25, 30 women, I know that there's something. It's like God's got his hands on this. There's something about this that's more than just what I'm doing. And that's when I started to study and learn about influence and who am I being and how people are perceiving me. And I started learning about the power of women. It's not in anything that she does, it's in her mind and what she identifies with. So if she truly identifies with actually being happy and feeling worthy inside of her own body and truly loving herself, she will attract a man that matches that vibration. But most of them do not. They present an image and a persona, but deep down inside, when the truth shows up, you look in the mirror and nobody's around, you will attract a version of the person that you look in the mirror and then be like, well, why is he acting like this? Well, you do that to yourself. But
Mm,
it's also the
mm.
other way around. So this is what I found. I treated women how I treated myself. Women treated me how they treated themselves. So it's a blind leading the blind, and we wonder why marriage couples break up within the first year, first 2 years, like 85%. So
So
it's
your
yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Your daughter. I can't stop thinking about your daughter, but I can't stop thinking about their relationship
Yes,
that was so important to you. It was like that was your number. Forget everyone else. It was like that was your number one purpose to make sure that the relationship I have with my daughter is a healed, healthy, growing relationship because the rest of her future depends on it. And so you did
100%.
all you can. Even to hear you say you studied, you got an education, you studied this thing and you studied that thing. Like how many fathers do we know? How many men do we know go above and beyond that far to do the work that they need to do to make themselves even available, accessible, worth your child wanting to be around you. Wanting it'll be different if you said your daughter wasn't speaking to you because her mother dot dot
Yep.
dot or her mother was the problem keeping her away from me. But that's not what you said, Garrain.
No.
You said your daughter at 15 had wanted nothing to do with you and you couldn't figure out the why, but you also knew that you didn't want to give up.
Right.
And in that,
Yeah.
in you not giving up, in you pursuing your daughter, it was almost as though you were pursuing purpose for other men and
Yes.
other women
Yeah.
who your daughter, that was 15. So that means 8 years later now.
Yeah.
Because she was 15, then I'm going to assume the relationship is much better now.
Much better. Much better.
And here you are, 8 years later, able to able to coach other men and other women, both, not just the
Yeah.
man from your
Absolutely.
perspective, but also the woman, to think a certain way, to have a different mind, to go after what it is. Like when you are truly pursuing purpose, go after the very thing that means the most to you, because you wouldn't have known that 8 years you would be here running after your daughter. You didn't know that. All you know is she came from you and it was your responsibility. I was having another interview earlier today and he said a responsible man makes for a responsible world. And then here you are just talking about you knew that you had to either become responsible or be responsible because your daughter's future depended on it.
I
And that
tried.
is where purpose began for you.
I tried the mom thing. Oh, your mom won't let me, and she da da, and I got nowhere. And I was like, but then there's this me part on the other side. I was like, I could change me. That if this can be the defining factor, then I'll work on me. And I didn't know where it was going to go, but I knew that what I was doing wasn't working, and I was willing to go anywhere and everywhere. And in every, it's so interesting how I was the kind of guy that cheated on every girlfriend. I had ever had. I didn't know. Being a broken boy, trying to be a man with no real role models that I respected to be like in these areas, didn't make it right. But I also didn't know what was happening, trying to fill a bottomless hole in my heart of unworthiness. Um, when my daughter came back into my life and she started trusting me, it's so interesting how that's when I met my wife. So it's almost like God said, now let me show you what I can do. Now, here's what's crazy, because a friend of mine was like, "You're not worried about the the black community talking about you because you have a white wife?" I was like, "Let me tell you something. You know how hard it is
Tell
to
us, Garrain.
find." I said, "You know how hard it is to find love?" And I was like, I'll tell you this: there are those men that will like literally disown a black woman. I would never do that because that's my mama, that's my big mama. Like I would never do that. I said, but I will tell you this: what I learned, God does not put a restriction on love. So I'm not going to model my culture. I'm going to model God. I want to learn to love like God. That's how I knew when God's love showed up. God's love didn't show up with a border or a restriction. God's love showed up in a package that it was so far beyond my realm of thinking. Never considered myself being committed, considered myself being married, much less married to a white woman. But there was an energy that I had never felt before in my life, like a portal opened up. And I'm telling this to my friend, and he's listening to me talk in such a way he ain't never seen me talk. I was like, for the first time in my life, I looked at a human and I literally saw the future. I knew like future with a border, and because of this religion and this thing, that's all traps. Because God don't love like that. I want to love like God. I want to have the patience like God. And so because that's my intention, when it comes, when the idea comes, when the project comes, I wonder why they all turn out the same. Successful, inspiring, empowering, breaking all kind of records. It's because it's got that oil all over. It's got that favor all over because I didn't put any limitations on it. And so when I shared that with my friend, he's like, damn, I ain't never heard no shit like that before in my life. I was like, and I understand there are people with these unworthiness, insecurities, and they will literally disown their skin color and all this other stuff. I was like, that ain't me. If you look at the construct of my life, I've always been a different cat. I've done what I felt inside. It's been always wanting to come out. My life now is no different. It's literally no different. That's why it has a feel to it. It's like, man, there's like your kids and your marriage and your business. It's all the same feel. That's when I'm walking in co-creation with God and there's zero limitations.
And I'm sitting here getting goosebumps because he couldn't bring you, and only because I follow you, I know her name. So I'm going to call her name. He couldn't bring you Blair with, especially how you say you want to love like God. You want to love like God. And when I think about the way that God loves us, it's the way that he was training you and building you, Garrain, to love your daughter.
Yes.
The way that you loved, what's your daughter's name?
Kylia.
Kylia. The
Yeah.
way that you love and ran after Kylia is how God runs after us as his own. He would leave the 99 and go after the one.
Yes.
He would move mountains to go after you. Like he would love us even when we don't deserve it. He would love us. And that was a character of you that he had to build.
Yeah.
And he used Kylie to do it. And then he said, when that time came to where now she was able to turn her heart back to her father, then he said, now, my son, you are ready. Because then if he had given you Blair before that, you would have treated Blair the same way you treated all the other
You know
women you had
what's
in your life.
crazy? 6 years prior in Minnesota, I did a speaking engagement and Blair was my liaison and I didn't even know it. I didn't, so she knew it. I didn't know it until Time Hop came up and I was like, wait, you, she was like, yeah, I was your liaison and you were so rude to me. I didn't like you and everything. So I didn't even put two and two together because I wasn't even ready. She wasn't ready either. Like there had to be development. And it was when I opened my heart. I never even opened this part of my heart to my mom. When I opened my heart fully for the first time in my life, there were things that Kylia was doing. And I was like, man, she's like, oh, where are your clothes? And I was like, why? She's like, I'm gonna wash your clothes. You've been working really hard. And I was like, damn, ain't no woman ever said that to me before. I was just like, that feels good. I would want a woman that says that, that just knows. I came home from Korea. They're like, I'm gonna go to the grocery store. I'll be right back. I was like, why? She's like, because I'm gonna cook for you. I'm like, but it's just something about it felt so good, and it was a certain way. And her mom taught her those things, so I got the chance to acknowledge her mom. I was like, yo, I would want a woman like this. I would want to. When I first met Blair, I was like, oh my goodness, Kylia and Blair have a very similar personality. That's how you know it's God.
Wow.
That's not about the
I'm
surface
smiling from
level
ear to ear
package.
because again, I follow both you and Blair. So I'm smiling because now I can see, now that I hear more of the behind the story, I can understand the smiles in the photos.
Yeah,
I can understand the story behind when you share, how you guys interact as a marital couple, and how important that is. Because if I speak to Blair, Blair's also doing big things as well,
yeah,
and you're also doing big things. So there's both of this home with two people doing great things, and now you have two children. But then dad is still the foundation. Dad is still the head of the home. And
yep,
the way that Blair still does what she does, but she still honors you.
yeah.
She still respects you.
That is part of
She
the
still
sacred
respects
order.
your position.
Yeah,
And it's
that is part of the sacred order. We got God, family, everything else. Anytime we go out of that order, some things mess up. We get in
it messes up.
arguments, which is that we're not free from arguments, but we have the tools to be able to come back to home base. God, family, everything else.
So when you think about the work that you guys are doing, I'm gonna stay in the marriage for a little bit because I think when people are walking in their purpose, they're walking in their vision, and they're doing big things, especially when you have a husband and wife doing big things. They're trying to find that homeostasis in the home. And there are times when they do move out of that order. And so there is strife. How have you and Blair been able to manage purpose in the home, manage doing doing life together
So,
as two people who are doing great?
yeah, I'm a big fan of everyone should have someone in their life that can pull out of them what they can't pull out of themselves because you can't see the picture while you're in the frame. So,
Say it slow,
any,
Garen. Say it
yeah,
slow for those people in the back.
yeah. Everyone, everyone, I don't care who you are, should have someone in your life that can pull out of you what you can't pull out of yourself because you can't see the picture while you're in the frame of your life. So having somebody to see your blind spots and be like, hey, you missed a spot. I think this is how you compress time frames and not have to learn the same lesson over and over and over. Next thing you know, everybody hates each other and there's insecurities and everything. So we hire coaches. Like we have a sex coach, money coach, business coach, spirituality coach,
Did
um,
you say you guys
um,
have a sex coach?
sex coach, yeah,
I
parent,
love it.
parental coach. So it's like I'm not in. It's like in business. I'm not going to just go in a room and be like I know everything. You actually don't know everything. You think you know everything, but the moment you think you know everything, that's when that aspect of you starts dying because the essence of life is growth. So how you stay ahead of the curve is having someone in your life that can see things that you're not able to see, so they can teach you new tools and things. So we've had a relationship coach since before we were married, because we knew our past, her past is crazy, my past is crazy. And it was like, we gonna need support. Not when it gets bad. We're gonna actually have something that supports us to sustain over a long period of time. This is something we went in. I do it in business, so why wouldn't I do it in our? Why wouldn't we do it in our marriage? And so that's been the biggest thing. You know, now we have a parent psychologist to support us and just understanding 2 and 3 year olds, and when a new baby comes in the house, and we're learning more about ourselves. And then, you know, at first we were just, and you know, everybody has their version of how they parent. So this is not to down anybody's style of parenting, but at first there was, I've always been a little bit stricter because I believe that um, that a woman's discipline is very different than a man's discipline when it comes to fathering and mothering. But we were still on the nicer side. It was like gentle parenting. Meanwhile, Soul got a personality like me and Blair put together times three, and it's gentle ain't working. And so, what we learned from our parent coach, he said, you're not parenting your inner child. You are training your child to be able to navigate through life. And life ain't, it's not as pretty as you think it is. So if you're just like, oh, hey, go and have quiet time without teaching them discipline, it's like you've literally got to teach them how to handle objection. If you want resilient kids, making them soothing them every single time you say no and they start crying is robbing them of becoming resilient. So what's going to happen? They're going to have to they're going to get crumbled by rejection when they get older. And so we went from trying to raise great kids to raising great adults. And so that's why
Absolutely.
my 3 year old literally sounds like she's 7 or 8 years old, and she processes like an 8 year old, and she can hang with them, and she just turned three. They're like, how are you? It's like, because we don't talk to her like a baby.
Like a child. Mm-hmm.
They're smart. They're smarter than we give them credit for, but they're absorbing our language. They're absorbing our energies. Whether we're if we're mad at each other, but we're not saying it in front of the kids, they can feel the energy of the mad
They know.
inside. Because I could feel
They
that with my
know.
mom and dad. I just couldn't name it when I was little.
And I love how through your life, and I champion this for any leader, for any person that's walking in their purpose. I love how through your life you have made sure that you put someone there who is higher than you, who is beyond you. You talk about now you have what you didn't have before, but you have the relationships with men. You
Yeah.
have the community with other men. You have the connection with other men now who can support you in that area. You know, you didn't have a father in your life after 12. So now you have father figures in your life that who can support you. Now on this end, you are great. You're at your apex. You're doing well, but you also are humble enough to know that I can only stay up there if I have the support of other people in all areas of my life, not just business, because I'm not just a businessman, not just as a husband, but also as a child. I think that is so important because that's where a lot of leaders, that's where a lot of great people fall. I think about um, uh, Moses, for instance. God gave him this charge. You know, go and talk to the people, or go and do this and say this, and he's like, "No, I can't. I can't. I can't. I am getting old." He's walking on a cane, and God say, "I got you covered. I'm going to support you." And there, Aaron is just supporting him, just like Aaron is the support that he needs to still do the great work. And here you are putting in place the coaches, putting in place the mentors, putting in place the trainers. I don't know how people do this life, especially when you're living a life with big purpose, with vision, as in leadership. How people do without it.
Well,
How people do without
a
it.
lot of times people are just not aware. But if you really think about it, when you were a little kid and you didn't know the ABCs, what was around? A community. It's called class, and it was different classes of people. But then, what else did you have access to? And then also, you had a mentor. That's called your teacher. And the teacher, someone that can pull out of you what you couldn't pull out of yourself. Because I don't know when the last time there was a fifth grader that taught themselves how to get out of fifth grade. It was always the teacher providing the lesson, providing the homework, providing the support, teaching the lesson. That is the same principle. Developing comprehension until it's embodied. And when it's embodied, you're ready for the next level. That's you going to the next grade. Those levels, tests at the end of the year, those don't stop
And I
after
think
school.
I go back to you wanting to get something out of the relationship with your daughter, and you're like, I don't have the tools. Clearly, who I am and what I'm doing ain't working. So now I have to go and get new tools and get new skills and get new information, and then start to apply them and start to embody them. And then when you did, you got exactly what you wanted from your daughter. And so then it helps with. I even think about, you have mentioned a lot of adversities and challenges you've gone through. I think you are at one of the apexes. I'm sure you can go higher if you wanted to, but you're at the apex of your life. You're a coach yourself. You're a teacher. You're a trainer. But there's a lot that you've learned along the way. There's a lot of lessons you've learned along the way, and every new information you get to make a different decision, or you get to make a new decision, if you will. And for you, I enjoy watching the work that you do, because you go after it, but you go after it hard. You go after it hard, also getting people to understand. And I love that you always go back to the child. You talk about the inner child a lot,
Yeah.
and the fact that you were able to relate what happens as a 5th-year old is the exact same concept and principle that happens now that you're an adult.
Yeah.
And why is the inner child so important as we grow?
Because adults are deteriorated children. It's a child inside of all of us, and most people forget. Adults are deteriorated children. And if you could remember when you were a little kid, is all that energy, all that creativity, all that confidence, all that joy, where did it go?
Where did it go?
And
And it
so,
went nowhere.
yeah, it's still there. What it did is it went to approval. The energy went to approval. It went to, oh, I'm unworthy. It went to, oh, I'm going to do this job because it runs in the family. Yeah, but it's not running through you. You actually want to be a guitarist and do something else, but you left the thing that you love to go and please someone else for their love. That's where it
Hmm.
goes.
Hmm.
It's like you leave the loss of self. You like literally leave self to go and be everyone else and what they want you to be. And who you'll start being who you think they think you should be. Because that's the one that's getting the attention and the energy and the mentions. But meanwhile, there's this little kid inside saying, Mom, Mom, Dad, listen to me, please, please. I want to go dancing, please. And when you don't listen to a child and they just keep calling and calling, then it turns to frustration. And then that frustration turns to rage. Then that rage turns into silence. And when it gets to the point of silence, the emotional closure,
Devastating. It's the worst. It's the
that's
worst. So
what's
what?
living inside of most of humanity's
Yes.
soul spirit right now.
Yes. And I think the more people that understand that, because especially when by the time you get to anger, by the time you get to this closure of emotion, it's all because it literally all started because there was a desire that wasn't met. It was a need that wasn't met. It was a love that wasn't satisfied. And it went unanswered. You were hurt enough. You went through enough pain. You went through enough fear, enough regret. And now you're angry. And even your anger is silenced. And by the time we get there, as people understand that really bottled up under this closed, angry person, it's just someone who wants to be loved, who wants to be heard, who want that child who is calling and wants to be heard. So, Garrain, if you had to encourage the listeners today on how they can answer that inner child that's calling, how they can stay connected with that inner child,
Two things. Two
what would that
things.
be?
There's a book, I think it's one of the greatest books ever written on understanding the artist, the little kid inside of you. And it's called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. That book. And then another thing is find one thing that you used to love to do when you were a child. If you don't remember, ask somebody that was around back then, what did I used to love to do? I used to love playing the guitar. I used to love painting. I used to love swimming. And it always brought a joy to your face. Start doing that once a week. Give yourself 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, once a week. And imagine taking the little kid inside of you out to go dancing or singing or painting or paper macheing or whatever the thing you used to love to do. And then start to keep a journal so that you can document the synchronicities that start to work its way in your life because you're operating from a different vibration, a different frequency, because you are tapping into the deepest reaches of your heart. That one thing can alter the course of somebody's life forever within 2 to 3 days.
So find the one thing that you used to love doing as a child. If you don't know, ask someone who was with you when you was a child, and then start doing it daily, and then document what
Yeah.
starts to happen in your life. That is great. That is great. I love inner child work. I love it. And we are all just grown up kids. Like I think it's great. Thank you so much for the advice, Garrett. This has been amazing. And I hope to those who are listening, when you think about Garrett's journey of being in prison, literally in prison physically, literally, and many of you who are still in prison and you're free and you're in prison, like his finding that freeing of his mind to now be at a place where he's completely free. He's doing his thing. He's Garrain Jones of Artist Power, has a great wife, beautiful kids. There's no excuse as to why you too cannot have found the freeing of your mind, the mission of your life, and the purpose of why you were created. Gary, we are grateful. We are grateful for you being here. Thank you so much. I must end. You know how you say you have this order, and it's God, family, and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's God/purpose, family, and then we must end on food. I'm a foodie. I love great food. I love good food. So I must ask, what is your favorite food and favorite restaurant?
I like soul. Oh, let me bring Chief in here so you can see him. It's the last part of the podcast. And baby Chief. Oh, baby Chief.
Oh, there he is. So
He's my baby.
beautiful.
I'd
Everyone,
say,
hi, Chief.
hey.
Smiling
Um,
and everything.
my one of my favorite restaurants. Um, I mean, it's always gonna be something that has to do with soul food because it
Soul
reminds me of
food.
home.
Awesome.
And my one of my favorite foods is my mama's cornbread casserole, and
Mm.
it's just so anything that reminds me of the taste of home. When my dad was still alive, mom was still alive, Uncle Keith was still alive, Big Mama was still around, which is my grandmother. My favorite dessert is sweet potato pie. And yeah, I just love like things that like savor, and it's just like comfort food.
Good food, good food. Love to hear it. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for also sharing your beautiful family with us. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. And for those who have listened, we hope that you get to take home and just apply one thing that'll change your life today. Until next time, it's been a great episode here on the Purpose Finder podcast. We'll see you soon. Bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I hope today's conversation lit a fire within you because purpose isn't just something you chase. It is something you live every single day. If this episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more people on their journey to purpose. Let's continue the journey together. Join the Purpose Finder community on Facebook for exclusive insights, tools, and a tribe of purpose-driven people just like you. And remember, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Your purpose isn't far off. It's already within you. It's time for you to uncover it and live it boldly. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep walking in your purpose.